Alrighty, I know some of you are still finishing up your desserts, and feel free to continue to eat those and go back for more. There's a 7-cookie minimum. Any of our interns still here? I know you might have hit that earlier today. It's okay to have a second 7-cookie minimum if you like. It's permissible during the summer only. But we got a nice little program for you tonight. As we previewed this afternoon after lunch, we're going to have some of our national championship tournament alums come up and share a story or two about their experiences and that sort of thing. But before they do that, I'm going to share a couple of stories. One a little more serious and then one a little more joke. I just wanted to talk a little bit more. You saw this afternoon some of the programs that we do in our education work. And for us, our work in education really starts with the end of President Reagan's presidency. So if any of you have ever seen his farewell address, the last, 15, 20% or so, he talks very specifically about education. And he talks about, he cites the need for an informed patriotism. So for us, that's where our work starts. So here at the foundation, we're not just telling the story and sharing the legacy of President Reagan, although certainly that's a major part of what we do. But it's also how do we work to continue that idea? How do we work to help create the informed patriots we know that are so essential to making our country work in the way that it should? And I don't know there's an academic or extracurricular activity that better helps prepare students to participate in democracy than speech and debate. I was in Philadelphia last week with my kids. Anybody from around? I know anybody from Philadelphia or around that area? Philadelphia, and our hotel was right next to a graveyard. So I'm just guessing, if any of you go online, you're booking a hotel and you have two options, and one of them says nice view of a graveyard, you're probably going to choose the other option. But I was really excited to have this view of the graveyard. Some of you are laughing. It doesn't say anything about, let me get to the story about why. It's not just because I have some dark fascination with things rising from the ground and zombie movies, although that's true as well. But it was right next to the Christ Church. And for those of you who are in Philadelphia, or you know what is in the Christ Church graveyard, well, there's one very famous resident of that graveyard. Does anybody know who's buried at the Christ Church graveyard? You can just say, if you know. Ben Franklin, yeah. So literally from our hotel room, we're looking out at the spot where Ben Franklin is buried. So in the work that we do here in cultivating citizen leaders, one of the quotes that always comes up, not just in our work, but in the work of people who work across this field of civic learning and civic engagement, is a quote that Ben Franklin gave. And the Christ Church itself is just kind of around the corner from Independence Hall. So he's buried, across the street is a Quaker meeting house, and there's the big mall, and on one end you have the National Constitution Center, in the middle you have the Liberty Bell, and then there's Independence Hall. And he's kind of right in the middle of all that. And one of my favorite stories from the founding of the country is about Ben Franklin. At the end of the Constitutional Convention, which took place over a long, sweltering Philadelphia summer. So if you kind of put yourself in the mindset, go back to 1787, there's no air conditioning. The Constitution Convention, they were there meeting, and they were doing something they didn't have a mandate to do. They weren't supposed to be doing it. They were just there, supposed to be revising the Articles of Confederation, and they kind of went above and beyond that and said, well, let's just kind of scrap that and put something new together. And so they did something that I don't think would go over very well today, which is they drew all the curtains. There's no transparency about the Constitutional Convention. They closed it up. Their debates happened kind of indoors. They didn't talk about it out, but people knew something was going on, right? And so at the end of this, in September of 1787, people had kind of gathered, in part because they wanted to know what was going on, but it also in part that probably arguably the two most famous Americans at the time were Ben Franklin and George Washington. And when you have the two most famous Americans kind of hanging out in your town, and there's no TV, there's no Snapchat, so they're like, let's go see what Ben Franklin and George Washington are up to. And so Ben Franklin famously comes out, and there's a lady who's standing in the crowd. And at this point, she goes, well, what have we got, Dr. Franklin? Do we have a monarchy, which is something that people were very concerned, after we had won the Revolutionary War and we were forging this new government. A lot of people were really afraid that it would be a monarchy. Or do we have a republic? And Ben Franklin, famously kind of witty and succinct, looked at her and said, a republic if you can keep it. Kind of walked away. Well, the history of our country is rich with people who have fought to keep it. If you look at the greatest American heroes, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Cesar Chavez, Susan B. Anthony, and there's many, many, many more. That's just kind of a sampling. Those are people who have fought for things like liberty and justice and freedom and rights for people. And these are all people who have done their part throughout history to keep that republic. And now, as the future of this country, our competitors, our wonderful speakers and debaters, it's your turn. And democracy is something you don't get to not take a turn, you know? It's Sandra Day O'Connor, appointed by Ronald Reagan, as you probably saw, first female justice on the Supreme Court, has dedicated most of her post-bench career to the idea of civic learning and why it's so important. And what she says is that democracy is not in the bloodstream. You're not born knowing how to be a citizen. And if our country and our schools make the assumption that, well, you're just going to figure it out as you go along, we know that that's not true either, right? And so it's something that's important. And when you engage in an activity like speech and debate, you're doing the things that are going to make you an informed and engaged citizen. You're doing your research. You know your facts. You can argue both sides. And those are the things we need. We need citizens to do that. We need our leaders to be able to do that sort of thing. And so by virtue of you being here, you are fulfilling a responsibility that you have to Ben Franklin. You're doing your part to keep it. And it's a responsibility you have to your friends, to your colleagues, to your community, and certainly to your country. And we have people here from all over the country tonight. This is not something that's regional or in your own city that's exclusive to one particular area or one particular class of people. And so I wanted to end on a little lighter note. I wanted to share a joke that President Reagan used to tell about the differences in people from different parts of the country. And then I'll turn it over to our much more articulate and better looking panelists today. But a Bostonian, do we have any Bostonians here? Let's go northeast. A Bostonian visited San Antonio. I know we have some Texans here, right? Texans. And asked one of the native San Antonians about what's that dilapidated looking ruin over there that you have here in San Antonio? And the San Antonio native was very proud and said, well, that's the Alamo. In that building, 136 immortal Texans held off an army of 15,000 for 4 days. Said the Bostonian. That's pretty cool. And who's the man on horseback over there? And he said, well, that, sir, is a statue of a Texas Ranger who single-handedly took on 46 men and broke up 27 riots in his lifetime. And the San Antonio looked at the Boston man. He didn't know he's from Boston, and he asked him where he was from. And he said, well, I'm from Boston, and we have our heroes there, too. You've probably heard of Paul Revere, for instance. And the Texan laughed at him and said, Paul Revere, you mean the guy who had to ride for help? So different perspectives, different parts of the country, one of the glorious parts of the tapestry of America that makes us so wonderful and vibrant and fun when we all come together from different parts of the country. So with that, I'm going to transition, and we are going to bring together 3 very talented speakers from different parts of the country who will share their experiences in this program. So please join me in welcoming Alex, Talise, and Kate to the stage.
Hello. Did you get it?
It's on.
Is this? Oh, okay, cool. We're good.
So,
Hello.
hi, everyone. Should we start by introducing ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. I kind of already met several of you, but my name's Talise. I am a rising junior at Vanderbilt University. I'm double majoring in medicine, health and society, and sociology with a minor in women's and gender studies on the pre-law track. Mouthful. I'm originally from Central High School in Springfield, Missouri. That's where I began my competition in speech and debate. And I'm currently living in Nashville, Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Kate or Katie Kleinle, depending on what you feel like calling me, honestly. I'm from Basking Ridge, New Jersey initially. Now I live in Dublin, Ireland, and I study at Trinity College of the University of Dublin. My majors are philosophy, politics, economics, and sociology. And I think that about covers it. I just finished first year. I'm going into second year next year. And the way that I got involved with the foundation is through Great Communicator last year.
So I'm Alex Millard. I'm originally from Independence, Missouri, from Truman High School. I currently go to Stanford University out in Palo Alto, California, studying public policy and economics. I got involved in the foundation as well last year with the Great Communicator series with Kate.
So I think the kind of point of this discussion is to kind of give you all a little better idea about what the debate is going to be like, what tomorrow is going to be like, and maybe beyond. So I know we've talked a lot about what it's like to be in the Reagan family, like a million times, really important. But in terms of what you guys are here for, I bet the debate is like kind of top on your mind right now. So I think we'll start with a question kind of about what we wish we had known coming into the debate, coming into the national championship. So does anyone want to take the first one?
I can go ahead. So from my perspective, I guess the biggest thing that I wish I would have known is that it's not a big deal how well you do. And that's crazy. I mean, I had come off of 4 years of high school speech and debate. Qualifying to nationals was like the thing, and you competed to win, and there was nothing else. You win or you didn't matter. But here, that's not the case. I mean, you guys all know that you're walking away with a scholarship, and yeah, there's a difference between $1,000 and $10,000, but $1,000 is a huge deal. Unlike Kate, I did not advance into quarterfinals last year, and at the time, I was like, well, that sucks. But now, like, I'm back as an intern. I am still really involved with the foundation. Just the fact that you're here is a huge deal. So take your time and enjoy it. And don't stress over, did I win this round? How many ballots did I pick up? In a year, you're going to forget. We were trying to figure it out earlier, and we couldn't remember our records or ballot counts. So enjoy the moment and forget about the results, because those won't matter in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I definitely second all of that. And my other biggest thing would be make friends in a big way, make friends. Last year, our group got so tight. I mean, like Alex and I, for example, we were at the same Great Communicator Championship last year, and we became really close. And we were Snapchat friends all year. And so when we both found out that each other was... I don't know how to make that grammatically correct. When we both found out that we were interning at the same time here this summer, we Snapchat messaged each other like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Just because, you know, we were genuinely happy to see each other because we had genuinely bonded and connected over the weekend of the Great Communicator Championships in 2016. So I think that this weekend could be one of two completely different experiences. It could either be you sort of coming here to compete and, you know, being in beautiful California and, you know, learning a lot about President Reagan and things like that, but really being here for the competition. Or it could be a really holistic sort of social experience as well, where you can make friends who are going to like unexpectedly show up in your life again. You know, meet people who really genuinely have things to offer that are just so nice. So genuinely make friends with the people around you. Like hang out tonight when you go back to the hotel. We all did, even though we were going to compete the next day. And
we joked about the topic.
Yeah,
we
like
openly shared our opinions on the topic with each other before the competition.
In retrospect, Alex and I were talking about how absurd it was that we became so close that we were literally telling each other our ideas on what we would be debating the next day, but we all turned out fine. So genuinely, you have nothing to lose from making social connections. And this is a tournament that really relies heavily upon being personable and having great personality and really good delivery. And it's much, much easier to achieve that level of personability if you're really good friends with the person across the table from you that you're debating. So I think that it just overall make friends.
Totally agree with that. I think for me, what I wish I had realized coming into the competition was that this is a super new experience for everyone. Like some of you have never even debated this style before. Some of you have maybe a couple of times, but really it's very fresh. And it's something that you don't get a lot of exposure to at all during the regular academic year. And so that's something that I think is super cool about this type of debate is that it's a great equalizer because everyone comes in and you learn a lot about your own communication style and you learn about this new type of of debate and how to be a different great communicator while you're here. And so I think that's something that I wish I had thought about more instead of thinking about all the accolades of the people who are competing. I would like stalk them on the NSDA website, like check out their points. I would watch their old videos, just like plot against them. And then whatever, I ended up realizing that didn't matter because, coming into this debate, everyone is trying to learn these new skills. So with that, I think we'll move on maybe to talking about advice you could give to the competitors for the tournament, maybe specific or more about socializing and stuff like that. But for me, something that I really wanted to share with you guys for how to do well throughout the competition has to do with how to appeal to judges. And something that actually my coach, Jack Tuckness, taught me a lot in high school was when someone asked who is the best qualified judge, like who are the best judges. His response was always put a mirror underneath their nose, and if it fogs up, they're good to go. And so that's something that you have to realize is that you're talking to everyday people, and that's really the important part about this competition. I think it's really important to treat this debate kind of like a first date. So, no, really, like seriously, think about it for a second. You would not talk about something that like your future significant other has no idea what you're talking about. Like, would you use things like using the word K or critique or, contention, like those things like debate jargon that someone else has never heard of before? That's not going to be appealing to someone else. And also tell stories that are relatable. Try to be personable with everyone who's around you and genuinely be charming. Just try to have a good personality in the round. Again, just act like you're going on a first date with your opponent and the judges, and then maybe they'll like you and let you go on another one or a few others, So I think that's an important thing to think about is who your audience is. It's everyone.
So beyond, I guess my answer to what I would say for the first question was advice in itself. But my only other thing I would say is that I think there's a really big misperception in the debate world that in order to be a good debater, you need to be intimidating and use sort of like esoteric, difficult to understand language. And what I would respond to that is, and this is something that I used a lot in my career in congressional debate too, on the regular debate circuit, that a truly great debater and a great communicator, particularly in this context, is someone who doesn't need to be confusing or doesn't need to rely on jargon in order to get their arguments across. If you're truly a great debater, then you have arguments that are good enough that you don't need to be using really fancy words to convey them. You don't need to be, rude and aggressive in cross-examination because your questions are just so good that they'll shine regardless of how friendly the tone is that you deliver them in. So I think that what I would say is rely on perfecting your arguments and making them as sort of accessible as possible to people. Because being aggressive isn't necessarily a great tactic. If you need to be aggressive to be a great debater, then you should probably improve your arguments so that way you can give really good arguments and still be a nice person. Sorry, that was kind of an aggressive way to say that, actually.
The first thing that I want to say about advice going into tomorrow is what Kate said to the first one: make friends, be social. But what I remember most from our competition last year on actual competition day was it was so laid back. Most debate tournaments you're going to, you see like at the end of the third or fourth or whatever round, waiting for postings, this like air of stress fills the building, and like you could cut it and it's tense and everyone is like, I'm not eating. And then they post breaks and then everyone quickly crams food into their mouth before the next round. Like, this is not like that. It's very laid back, relax. After third round, we watched one of our competitors had done magic, and so we just watched magic tricks and relaxed and joked. Like, it's very laid back. And so my advice would be stress about preparing right after this for like 30 minutes. Read your speeches, whatever you need to do to feel like you're prepared, and then go relax in the pool with each other. Tell jokes, go Pokemon Go hunting. That's what we did. It was big back then. And then spend all of Saturday, like, we debated each other in prelims, and we got out, and right after we just started talking like friends, because that's what we were. Like, there was there was no stress throughout the day. And, you guys are prepared. You're smart. You know what you're doing. There's a reason you guys are here. There's no need to stress tomorrow. Relax. And when you let that kind of relaxation set in, the communication will come naturally. So that would be my advice. Do your stressing for 30 minutes after dinner and then let the competition happen.
So I think the last question that we'll talk a little bit about before, let them ask questions or no? Yeah? Okay. So before we kind of turn the mic over to you guys, I guess what I'd like to hear from you both is how do you think debate prepared you for college and beyond?
I'll go ahead and start. So I actually decided not to do debate in college. I said, let's do something new. So I did mock trial. Big difference, clearly. So I didn't carry the debate skills over to debate in college. But what carried over for me was the ability to communicate and not be afraid to talk to people. A lot of my friends were like, oh my gosh, you went and talked to office hours. That's a big step. But I just casually walked in and was like, hi, nice to meet you, professor. Here are my questions. And it was second nature to just talk to someone I didn't know because of debate. The ability to reach out to someone and just say, hey, so I have this question, this issue, I'd like to know if you can resolve it, make those connections, carry those communication skills with you, which is what's great about this, is that we emphasize communication, not spreading or knowing the most policy language. Those are the skills that will carry over and that have helped me the most in college to make connections, to come back here, make connections, even here. It's carry over your communication and remember that that's what this event is for. And that's what'll matter in 10 years.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I would say is obviously it brought me back here, which is really great. It did give me both within the Reagan Foundation and in general in life, it gave me a lot of connections and a lot of friends that I still see today. Friends I have in New York City from debate, we still get together all the time. So once again, just really hitting home that friendliness aspect. It is so important to remember that even though you're competing, there's a human being on the other side of the other podium, And so they have a lot to offer. And obviously you have something in common. You're both here. And so there is a really large opportunity for connection there. Beyond that, I think the biggest thing that debate gave me is the confidence to know that I can speak not only in front of a crowd, but if I can speak in front of a crowd, then I can speak to individual people too. So, even in job interviews, I find myself going into my debate voice, and it really helps because it really helps you kill job interviews when you're an 18-year-old going in there with a background of public speaking. I tried to debate in college, but I go to college in Europe, and the only style that we have is called British Parliamentary, and so it's a two-person event. And I couldn't find a partner who would mesh with my speaking style. It just did not work. So after trying unsuccessfully all year to figure it out, I just sort of went into semi-forced retirement. And now I'm on the council of a debating society where I've gotten loads of friends and people that I already know. I'm living with some of them next year, people that I'll be hanging out with for the next 4 years. So even though I'm not actively debating anymore, again, it is such a social activity. Once you let your guard down and once you remember that we are debaters after we're human beings, which sounds very obvious, but is incredibly difficult to remember sometimes in the heat of competition.
Yeah, I'd like to retweet everything that both of you said. But for me, honestly, the one word I can use to describe what I've gained from debate is endurance. Think about it. You're staying up all night long to write a case that you really haven't prepared for the next day for a tournament. And then you haven't slept all night, but you have to get put together, put on a nice suit jacket, do your hair. And then you're running around for 2 days straight with no sleep, not real food. I can't remember a single tournament where the entire day I didn't eat anything but a Kit Kat and Dr. Pepper. And you have to be composed and really articulate. And so I've actually found those skills to be incredibly useful in college. I can go days without sleeping and I look so good in the next morning, And my professors, they're like, wow, you must be so prepared. This paper was great. And I was like, you bet, Yeah, I was. So honestly, all the other things aside, that's been super helpful. It's not something that I ever expected to happen in college. And also the caffeine addiction. Debate gave me that too.
Yeah. I'm trying to kick it. It's
I
not.
know.
It's hard.
So I think if you guys have questions, I know I had a lot of burning questions that this would have been a good time during my competition to ask. Maybe I could. Do we have time for that? Oh, sweet. Okay. Anyone have any questions? None. Yeah.
What career path do you think debate is most suitable for?
Literally anything. So a lot of kids do debate thinking that it's going to, get them into politics or something like that. I know one of my friends I made from debate is doing astrophysics now. She's interning at a research lab, like out in Arizona. She's from New Jersey, so for us, that's really far. And, I know people who, like personally, I want to take a federal law enforcement path. I know people who are interning on the Hill. Really, the idea of being able to carry yourself in a professional manner, research for hours at a time, and think on your feet, those are three things that can apply to any profession. So I think as long as you really focus on honing those skills, you can do anything you want. I don't think debate is really a funnel towards any specific career.
So I started on the speech side, and I did duo and DI throughout all of high school, but then I switched over and did public forum debate mostly. Public forum debate, I advocate for it a lot. I went to 2 tournaments in Congress, and then obviously Great Communicator, but mostly speech. Debate was like why not?
Congressional debate in a big way. Congressional debate. I always wished I did LD, actually, but congressional debate.
Yeah, I also was a big PUF, that's what we call it in Missouri, public forum. Yeah, yeah.
PUF is 1 syllable, PF is 2.
Yep. So I did public forum. I also dabbled in oratory, mostly I qualified in duo and DI, also in Congress. So like all of it. I'm not good I can't do policy or extemp, but I tried everything else. Anything else?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who's trying to build up a debate team in their school?
Ooh. Ask Jack Tuckness. He asked what advice do we have for someone who wants to build up a debate team in their school? And I would say it's really big to build up camaraderie in the team, and also to have leadership. So you want to have people who are really invested in making the next generation better. I think that's a theme that we had in our team for years, is that, the seniors were always coming down to the novice debate classes and telling them, this is what you do. Like, Tuckness is great, but when you have a team that's like 150 students big, you have to have the student investment. So, the teachers, all of that, assistants, we really only have Tuckness, and then the other students. So getting people who are so invested that they want to make other people better, it's more than just your success. It's like, what legacy are you leaving for the team? And that's something that I would definitely encourage, if possible.
Anyone else, or? Nope.
Last chance.
Yes.
When do you plan on going into politics?
That's an interesting one for me, because it was originally like hardcore yes when I started school. Like, I got out of debate and I said, okay, so I'm going to study political science or economics or public policy or something like that. That way, when I graduate, I can go to law school. That way, after I get out of law school, I can quickly work at a firm, build up enough political capital that I can run for office, and then I'm in politics. I had mapped it out. Halfway through this year, I had decided I actually really enjoy public policy and economics for what it is, not for what it could be. And so I've fallen away from doing politics, and I'm leaning more toward business, law for the sake of law, consulting, wherever I end up. And if I end up in politics, I'm not opposed to it, but it's no longer like my driving goal.
I'm the same way. I think that if I were at this point to go into politics too early in my life, it would really hurt me that I've been in Europe because I don't have like the U.S. college connections. So I think that that's actually a barrier for even if I had wanted to go into politics. I know that for a long time during high school, I mean, I did congressional debate. I thought I was going to, like, I literally just wanted to go into Congress, and that was what I was going to do with my life. But then I realized that I could probably make a much bigger impact somewhere else, honestly. And so, I mean, now after college, I plan on doing a lot of federal law enforcement. I want to join the Army and then the FBI. And if after that, I would like to go into politics, I'm the same as Alex in that life might take me there, but I'm not actively shooting for it.
I'm the complete opposite of both of them. I came out of debate thinking I wanted to be a doctor. I was like, no more, like I'm done with this debate stuff. And then I got to school and I found myself doing like well in my STEM courses. And then I would like take a course on like health policy because it was an elective. And I was like, why not? And then I was like, I love this. This is what I dream about. My friends are like, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe like an NPR podcast and like reading The Economist. And they're like, really, Talise? You want to be a doctor? That's what you want to do? So I ended up changing my mind. And I don't necessarily think I want to be like an elected official, but policy making is like my new driving force and everything that I've ever hoped and dreamed of without actually knowing it. So, well, thank you guys. If there are no other questions, good luck tomorrow. You all rock.
Best of luck to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say best of luck too, but I think it's a bit redundant because all three of us said it, but you know, I do mean it.
It's off.
Nice job. Thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, all three of you. Lots of tips that I will certainly be using when I am competing tomorrow. I haven't prepared much, but I'm hoping I can just win them over with my charm. But I wanted to take just a few minutes. I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping items. So the bus is here. You don't have to leave yet. If you look, I asked Siri earlier today, and I guess you can also ask Alexa or whoever Googly is. Is that what Google's is called? What time sunset's happening? It's happening right around 8. So you will probably have to watch it from the hotel, I'm guessing, because it's still kind of up there. But it's a nice place to watch the sun get a little bit lower. But we wanted to give you a little bit of time tonight to check out the gravesite if you haven't done that yet. And this time of day is a nice time to kind of quietly pay your respects. And I'll tell a little story about Mrs. Reagan's funeral in just a second, which some of us had the honor to work in March of last year. But I wanted to give a couple of housekeeping items, and then Rebecca will make sure that I don't miss any of them.
We have 16 competitors. This is an update from the last time that we've seen you, so I just wanted to give a warm welcome to Alora. Thank you for mobilizing and getting over here. Debaters, if you could do me a favor, go introduce yourself to her, because she is a day and a half behind getting the friend name. So please make sure that you say hello tonight, so that way she's debating friends tomorrow, okay?
Welcome aboard. And then just for tomorrow morning, so the bus is going to leave the hotel at 8 a.m., which means it's leaving, so don't kind of stumble out at 8:01 and look around and go. And then you have to borrow the moped from the hotel, which is not a very good moped. It's rarely used and just embarrassing to ride up the hill. So get there 8 a.m. Breakfast is in the morning. What time is breakfast open? It starts at 6, so depending on how early you are, how much caffeine you drink, or maybe you're just coming out of the pool at 6 in the morning, based on Alex's advice, and that's okay too. And then anything else I need to mention about tomorrow morning? Debate attire. Yeah, you guys are all professionals, right? You got your debate attire ready to go. So yes. Anything else? No. Okay, got it. So I wanted to, but before we give you a chance to go kind of pay respects, if you want to just kind of take a gander off into the distance. On a clear day, you can actually see all the way out to the Channel Islands. Today, you can imagine the Channel Islands through the haze. But I wanted to tell just a brief story about Mrs. Reagan's funeral. So Mrs. Reagan passed last year in March, as I'm sure you didn't miss. And one of the things that was pretty amazing about the actual day of Mrs. Reagan's funeral. So she passed away on a Sunday. The funeral took place on a Friday. So the mobilization it was 1,000 people were invited. Everybody on the team was called in to reach out, invite people from all over the world to attend and that sort of thing. The team that came in, they set up a tent because they were looking at the weather, and it looked like it was going to rain. And so they said, okay, well, we can't it's going to be an outdoor ceremony, but if it's going to be outdoors and it's raining, so they had to construct a giant tent, which actually took up the entire south lawn here. And then they were kind of debating back and forth. Are we going to keep the sides open to let some of the air in, or if it's raining, we got to keep them down? It's one of those things. So we all came in on the morning of the actual funeral, and the sky was gray, but there was no rain. And so they said, okay, we're going to put the side of the tent up. And all morning long, through all the kind of speeches and songs, the beautiful singing. If you want to hear some of the beautiful singing, you can talk to Nick, our intern, who was actually one of the performers at Mrs. Reagan's funeral, and he loves it when I tell people, which is why I'm saying it. But it just kind of it kept the rain held off and held off. And so after the services were over, the family escorted Mrs. Reagan's casket out to the grave site, where they placed it on top of the grave site. And the rain still continued to hold off. They held a little kind of very brief family opportunity for them to say a few words. And then some of the VIP guests came out and started to pay their respects. So the former first ladies, we had one former president, President Bush was here. And then once kind of that group had gone through, all of a sudden the skies just opened up, and it was pouring rain. I mean, just literally, like, imagine just 1,000 people standing over you dumping buckets of water. It was coming down, and people were scrambling and trying to get through, and everybody was soaking wet in a matter of seconds, and it looked like it was never going to stop. And so, a lot of the VIPs left and that sort of thing. The staff went over. There was a big reception over in Air Force One. And at the end of the day, everybody was tired. We'd probably worked about, 100 hours over the course of that week. People were here from 6 in the morning till midnight almost every day. Everybody was kind of tired. And as we were taking the staff shuttle back to the parking lot, the sky kind of broke and a rainbow appeared. And it was just beautiful. And I'll kind of tie that. So imagine that rainbow. Keep that rainbow in your head. I'm going to tell you the story of another rainbow. So President Reagan, as you probably learned today, was born in a small town in Illinois, Tampico, Illinois. Has anybody ever been to the Reagan birth site? Okay, we got one in the audience. So when I tell you that the town actually got smaller. It was a small town when he was born, and it's actually gotten smaller. The population is less than 700, I think. They have a very short main street. It's got a couple of stores, and above those stores are some residents. And President Reagan was born on that main street in an apartment upstairs from what is now a bank. When he was born, I believe it was a bar, but he didn't know that. He was just a baby and was, kind of born in the room. And in the room was this beautiful skyline. And he left. He went on to Dixon, and then he went on to be California, and then he went on to be president of the United States. But the day he was elected president of the United States, they have a picture there that as they were as they were announcing the election results, a rainbow appeared over Tampico Town Square. And it looked like it was going into the apartment. So at least the advantage of the photograph that they show at the museum, it looks like this rainbow is literally going into the place that Ronald Reagan was born. Okay, so now there's two rainbows, and you're like, okay, well, what's the connection? So at the very end, so after Mrs. Reagan was interred, one of the things that she really wanted, as you know, the story of President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan's love is legendary, probably the most singularly kind of compelling love story in the history of American politics, at least, and one of the great American love stories of all time. They wanted to be buried so close, their caskets are literally touching. Her Secret Service code name was Rainbow. So the kind of like and then so after as it was complete and they kind of interred, they added Joanne Drake, who you all met earlier today, sent out an email with a photograph that said Rawhide and Rainbow. His code name was Rawhide, but Rawhide and Rainbow together again. So it's just kind of a beautiful way. And sometimes, for those of you who are maybe literature majors, I don't know. I was a literature major, so when I see symbols like that kind of coming together, I'm like, ooh, that means something. I don't know what it means, but it's a double rainbow, and maybe you've seen that video on YouTube. So with that, we just wanted to give you a little bit of a chance, if you want, to maybe mingle a little bit more, say hi, greet our newest addition to the national championship, pay your respects at the grave. In maybe 15 minutes or so, we're going to head back out to the bus and get you back to the hotel and get ready for tomorrow. So thank you, everyone, for a great night. Thank you once again to our panel, our speakers. Great job.